Thanks for joining me for a brief tutorial on our new sight reading and music literacy curriculum. I'm Ed Huckeby, author of the 3-book series, Core Competencies for the Successful Development of Sight Reading Skills, also known as Sight Reading 101, 201, and 301. This tutorial is designed to give you an overview of the tools available in this new series that will help you to teach music literacy and sight reading more effectively, and assist you in meeting local, state, and national assessment standards. Now let's take a look at the series and see how it can help you improve your band students' sight reading and music literacy skills. In this presentation, we're going to look at a specific methodology or procedure you can follow to help your students to prepare for sight reading. We're also going to look at where the Sight Reading 101 series begins and where it will take you and your students from beginning to end. We will look at the learning outcomes defined in the series and how these specific outcomes can not only help define your curriculum, but also make it easier for you to construct your lesson plans. And we will look at the assessment tools which are included in this series and how they can help you meet specific local, state, and national standards for learning. Our overall premise in this series is that the ability to read music at sight is one of the most important assets a successful musician can possess. I think you would agree that the more efficient a musician is at sight reading, the more confident and competent the musician is. So, the development of good sight reading skills is a critical element in the development and nurturing of young musicians. An important element in the academic viability of our new sight reading series is that we must build sight reading skills on music literacy foundations which can be measurably assessed. In other words, we must be able to show that students are making measurable progress from the beginning of instruction to the end of instruction. Now, if we agree that sight reading is an important element in developing good music performance skills, we must ask ourselves 3 questions. First, how do we teach good sight reading skills, and what approach can be used to help students learn to sight read? Second, what are the specific elements of music literacy which are involved in sight reading? And third, what are some of the tools available to help students become outstanding sight readers? In dealing with the first question regarding how to teach sight reading, it is my contention that the director and the students need to agree on a specific, predetermined methodology for approaching a new piece of music. We need to define the specific musical elements to be addressed and the order in which we are going to address those elements. For centuries, we have used devices called mnemonics to assist us in remembering specific details like addresses, telephone numbers, and formulas, for example. In education, we can use mnemonics to remember techniques and processes. In this sight reading procedure, we have developed an acronym to help you and your students remember a unique approach which isolates 8 specific musical elements critical to successful sight reading. The acronym Market Radar represents an easily recognizable approach which will allow students to efficiently prepare for sight reading. In this graphic, using the Market Radar symbol found throughout our sight reading series, you can see each of the defined elements of music literacy which should be examined when sight reading. Let's look at each of these elements independently. First is the letter M, which represents the musical term meter, also often referred to as the time signature. In the Market Radar sight reading process, the director and students isolate their focus specifically on identifying the beginning meter or time signature, scanning the page from top left to bottom right to determine any changes in meter which might occur. Frequent or unusual meter changes should be noted. In regular classroom sight reading settings, students are encouraged to use a pencil to mark the initial meter and meter changes as they occur. Of course, in competitive sight reading settings where adjudication is involved, pencil notations would not be allowed, so making mental notes would be appropriate, with verbal confirmation from the director. It's important to note at this point that in dealing with meter changes, the pace of the eighth note, unless otherwise noted, always remains constant. This concept of the constant eighth, signifying the continuous passing of time in music, is a key and fundamental rhythmic element throughout our sight reading series and is represented visually in all meter and rhythm exercises. The letter K stands for key or key signature. First, we should attempt to determine whether the selection being sight read is in a major or minor key, or if it has modal tendencies. Key changes should be circled with a pencil or noted mentally. Tempo is the third element in our market radar acronym. The initial tempo should be noted, as well as any marking which impacts the pace of the music, such as a retard, accelerando, or fermata. Once the items which impact the tempo and pace of the music are identified, we scan for the rhythmic elements. Are there unusual or tricky rhythms which should be isolated? And are there specific rhythms which should be verbalized, sung, or clapped, depending on the predetermined process which you follow? Again, we would circle rhythmic problem areas with a pencil, if possible. Next, we look for accidentals, which are outside the key signature already identified, and circle them or make a mental note. Now we scan top left to bottom right for dynamic changes which might not be obvious, looking especially for unique or dramatic changes, like sforzando or subito dynamic markings, and any crescendo or decrescendo markings which might be present. Following the review for dynamics, we look specifically at the articulation markings which are found in the sight reading selection, especially noting any sequences or series of slurs, staccato or marcato markings. I have found that articulation is one of the most difficult concepts for students to grasp and execute uniformly. Developing a system of verbalizing articulations can be very helpful to students in learning the differences between the different articulation markings. I like to use a soft attack, da, if there is no articulation marking, ta for the regular accent, dot for staccato, tot for marcato, do for the tenuto, and for a slurred or tied note. Learning to verbalize markings can be very helpful in establishing a uniform articulation approach across the band. The final acronym letter in the market radar method is R for roadmap. These are signs which alter the path of the music in any way, such as repeats, first and second endings, and da capo or dal segno. So, by teaching students to isolate each of these 8 elements of music literacy, we provide them with an excellent tool which helps them to identify and understand the various components found in music, and thus enables them to be more successful during the sight reading process. This methodology also helps the student and the director to be more organized and unified during the sight reading process. I would also like to point out that the director must incorporate other qualitative elements such as intonation, tone quality, balance, and blend into the sight reading preparation process. These are additional critical elements of music literacy and good musicianship. Now that we have examined the methodology by which we can effectively teach sight reading and the specific music literacy elements which are involved, let's take a look at specific tools which can be used to help your students become better sight readers. Core Competencies for the Successful Development of Sight Reading Skills is a 3-book series comprised primarily of sequential and progressive music competency sets through which students can develop the music literacy skills needed for efficient sight reading and, essentially, better musicianship. Each competency set includes 6 exercises focused on the musical elements identified on your screen, plus a final exercise combining the previously presented elements for assessment. Additionally, each exercise has a specifically defined outcome which can be incorporated into the teacher's daily lesson plan. This series, subtitled Sight Reading 101, Sight Reading 201, and Sight Reading 301, is a comprehensive music curriculum which is designed to be implemented beginning in the second year of instruction, typically in the 7th grade, after your students have completed a standard beginning method book. Since the curriculum is progressive, Book 2 should be implemented after the competencies in Book 1 have been met, and Book 3 should follow completion of Book 2. This curriculum can be used as your daily warm-up, as a supplement to your already established warm-up, or in the best case scenario, as an established part of your daily curriculum routine. Because the series is sequential and progressive, the director can determine how the sight reading curriculum is implemented. In a perfect world, ideal setting, each book would represent a 1-year comprehensive curriculum. In other settings with less flexibility, the 3-book series may actually be a complete 6-year curriculum. Unique and important supplements to the 3-book series are the assessment packs, which have been developed to help music educators demonstrate both individual and ensemble progress which is made throughout the academic year. This can be especially effective when administered in a pre-test, post-test setting. Each assessment pack is correlated with the difficulty level of each series book, and includes 1 unison exercise and 2 actual band literature excerpts which allow for assessment of balance, blend, and other more qualitative musical elements. Each assessment pack includes several copies of 4 different types of assessment tools which can be used to measure student performance progress and content knowledge. Each student book also has a self-assessment rubric which will assist students in charting their progress as they complete the sequential exercises throughout the book. Before we conclude, let's take a look at a few example pages from the series, just to give you an idea of the scope of the skill levels covered and the sequence of instruction. This is page 1 from the Sight Reading 101 trumpet book. You can see that the concept of the constant eighth note, which was mentioned previously, is reinforced visually in all the 0.1 and 0.2 meter and scale exercises throughout the series. This reinforcement of the constant eighth is critical to the comprehension of time and space in music, and is especially important when students are introduced to the concept of changing meter. Book 1 covers the keys of B-flat, E-flat, and F, as well as their relative minors. The chromatic scale is also introduced and incorporated into Book 1. As you can see, page 2 of set number 1 introduces the other 4 music literacy elements previously identified. You will notice that each element is isolated and not combined with the others until the final assessment exercise. This design allows for focus on the specific musical elements. You will also note that short phrases are typically notated with repeats to allow for repetition as needed to master the specific elements. We now move to competency set number 13, the last set in Book 1. You can see that in the 13.1 meter and rhythm exercise, we're now combining 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, and 6/8 in changing meter patterns. When approached from the constant eighth perspective, changing meter becomes a very natural rhythmic process for students. In 13.2, you can see that we have combined chromatic and diatonic scale passages. You will note that the elements are still isolated in these exercises. In other words, the articulation issues are only addressed in the 13.4 articulation exercise, and dynamics are only found in the 13.6 exercise. However, the assessment exercise at the end of each competency set incorporates all of the introduced skill sets. Now let's take a look at the competency sets at the end of Book 2. As you can see, the required skill sets have increased significantly by the time we have reached the 26.1 rhythmic exercise, with multiple meters having been introduced. Again, the constant eighth concept is reinforced visually. You will note that 26.2 uses the concert D-flat major scale and relative minor of B-flat minor, and also incorporates extensive changing meter, all below the visual reinforcement of the constant eighth. In 26.4, note that the exercises at this point have integrated 16th note patterns in mixed meter with extensive articulation requirements. Additionally, we continue to introduce tempo and expression terminologies in exercise 26.5. The assessment exercise at the end of set 26 represents a culmination of elements, including an advanced key, rather tricky articulations, dramatic dynamic contrast, and complex changing meter. Book 3 includes a combination of culminating competency sets as well as scale exercises in every major and minor key, modal scales, and the blues scale. The 33.1 exercise shown here provides an example of the advanced level of rhythmic skills which have been developed at this point. Additionally, in Book 3, there are 9 two-part exercises designed to help students develop independence of thought and self-reliance. There is also an exercise to assist in developing ensemble balance and blend. At the end of each book is a set of practice assessment exercises. The final practice assessment exercise shown here from Book 3 provides additional insight into the advanced levels which students have reached after having progressed through the entire series. Please note that the 3-book series, Core Competencies for the Successful Development of Sight Reading Skills, is designed as a textbook series for band. These books may be eligible for purchase through your school's textbook fund allocation. I hope you'll take an opportunity to examine this new series and explore how it can help you, your students, and your band program. The books and the assessment packs can be ordered through your local dealer, your online dealer, or directly through the Barnhouse website. Thanks again for joining me.